All right, so far so good. Surprise! Welcome to a brand new episode of the List Show. One of my other shows I do just popped up. There's a bunch of X that out. All right, just a bunch of stuff just popped up, but it's still working okay. Still running, still doing stuff. It is Memorial Day weekend, so I figured I'll throw out I have some free time. So I think I'll throw out some stuff here. My regular show, Dylan Knows, will be later tonight, around 11:30 tonight, doing my usual weekly stuff. This is a special show I do periodically when I want to talk about something different than what I do on my regular show. And I also have another one called Interview with Myself, or Conversations with Myself, where I talk about other things as well. But I haven't done one of these since Val Kilmer passed away way back in like January, February. So I figured since I had the time now, I would do something here. And I'm trying to work out the time for it. I got a bunch of these lined up for the year. For these list shows I like to do, anniversaries for movies, first and foremost. And then I do like actor performances. And then I do like other stuff like that. I'm working on one called the top high what's the word I was using? High concept movies. And a few other ones as well. So this one is we're going to be talking about the top 30 movies from 1995. 1995, I graduated from college around this time 30 years ago. So I figured this would be a perfect time to talk about that. I have the top 25 movies of 2000, which is the year I met my wife. So I'm going to do that closer to our anniversary in September. Our anniversary of our first date. We get married in 2003, but we started dating in 2000 to September 2000. So I'll do it closer to that. I do have a special one planned for around my birthday. Jaws' 50th anniversary is literally on my birthday. It was released June 20th, 1975. So I will be watching Jaws that day on my birthday, but I will also be doing around that time, not necessarily on my birthday, but around that weekend, I will be doing the top Steven Spielberg movies of all time. So got that one coming up, so that'll be a fun one to do. But for now, I want to talk about the top 30 movies in 1995. Now, I have 30 movies I like, and then there's a few other ones that scraggle in there that aren't quite up to snuff or have a impact on 1995 or the film industry itself. So I put those in honorable mentions. So instead of, I usually do two, I did three today. So first up on the honorable mentions is To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar remake of a Australian film called Priscilla Adventures in the Desert, about a bunch of drag queens who go across the country and get involved in something. This one has John Leguizamo, Patrick Swayze, and Wesley Snipes in it, and it's a hilarious comedy. And with all the anti-trans stuff going on around there now, and dressing up in women's clothing, which I just said last. I just had it. Drag queens. With all the anger towards that, a movie like this, which shows them in a great light, and plus it's Patrick Swayze, who can do no wrong. High recommended, but not quite high enough on my list. Maybe it's one of those I need to rewatch again because I haven't seen it since I first saw it way back when, and maybe it's time to do that. Maybe it would make its way up there. That's the other thing I need to point out, is that this list is not the end-all, be-all. This is a liquid list. It could change. Hello there, Pepper. Right there is my Pepper kitty. I can't see it right there. Right there's my Pepper kitty. This is a liquid list, so this is a list I have at this moment, and it could change, obviously, if I see any other movie from 1995 and I like it better than any of these other ones. So this is not the end-all, be-all. This is also my list. If you do not agree with it, that's fine. I'm sure that's one of the points, is that we do not have to force people to say, well, I like this, so you should like it too. That's not the way this works. The way it works is I like this movie, but I might not like that movie as much as you do. So you can put it higher on your list. I don't care. To me, this is my list. This is the movies that I like. You might say, well, I would put that one higher. Well, good for you. Do your own list, make a comment, whatever. this is my list, and this, in my opinion, this is how I like it. And I'm just letting you know that these are 30 movies, 33 technically movies. You should definitely check out. And you may or may not enjoy them, and they may not be as high on your list as they are for me, because there might be other things attributed to it. But just want to let you know about that. The second honorable mention is Billy Madison. I was never really the biggest Adam Sandler fan, but I cannot ignore the fact that this movie, Billy Madison, was the first one that really brought him into prominence. He'd been in a few other supporting roles up to that point, but Billy Madison was the first one where he really was the lead. And much like with Ace Ventura the year previous with Jim Carrey, this skyrocketed Adam Sandler into the stratosphere of huge movie star. Billy Madison did huge numbers about a rich, spoiled brat who needs to redo all 12 of his grades of school in order to get his inheritance from his father, rich father. And it's typical Adam Sandler sort of stuff, and it started this whole run that continues with all the other ones, the Water Boy and the golf one, which I've seen it. Happy Gilmore, and Water Boy and all those big ones, and has led to where he is right now, being one of the most successful movie actors of all time. And I will also forever give him credit for looking at what streaming could be. And before anybody else did, have been doing it now, Adam Sandler put his hat in with Netflix saying, I'm going to give you a movie a year and you can air it on your streamer and not in the movie theaters. And so he hasn't had any of his real big comedy movies debut in movie theaters. They've been showing up on Netflix, and they've been killing it in the ratings. He's been making a shit ton of money, probably more money than he would have made if he would have put it out in movie theaters. So Happy Gilmore 2 is a good example. That's coming out end of July. You figure, okay, Happy Gilmore was hugely popular. You think it was in the movie theaters. You think that he would release it in the movie theaters. No, he's not. He's releasing it directly on Netflix on July 25th, and it's going to probably be the biggest movie of the year on Netflix, probably, and maybe on any streaming, really, to be honest. So, but I have to give credit where credit is due. I'm not the biggest Adam Sandler fan of his movies. As a person, I heard he's actually a pretty decent guy. And I also have to give him credit for his business credit. But this movie, Billy Madison, which came out in 1995, was the one that started it all for him and made him become who he is today. This one is just a cheeky little thing for me. I know how bad it is. I did a whole episode with my friend Mike Belinsky about this years ago. You should check it out. It's one of the funniest things I've ever done. It was our review of Showgirls. And Showgirls is the third. Honorable mention, came out in 1995. I had the hugest crush on Elizabeth Berkley, so being able to see her in Flagrante Delicto was outstanding, but the movie itself is shitty. Unfortunately, Kyle MacLachlan, who I love from Twin Peaks, was in it also. Gina Gershon's fantastic, and Elizabeth Berkley did the best with what she could do, but the script was just pure shit, and there's a lot I have issues with, but I'm not going to get into that because I did a whole episode about that. I really need to repost it. I think I might actually, after today's episode, I might go back, find it, and repost it. Me and Mike had one of the best episodes I've ever done reviewing this movie. So it's also one of the craziest ones you've ever seen. So if you want to see me in a new light, definitely check that out. But Showgirls definitely deserves to be in here because while it was a shitty movie, it has become sort of a Rocky Horror Picture Show, the new millennium sort of thing, where people do midnight showings of it, and they do the lines and they do stuff. Not quite as intense as Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it definitely has some stuff in there, and it definitely has some cheese when it comes to it. And plus, Elizabeth Berkley is still a very fine woman, and seeing all of her parts is absolutely French chef's kiss. French chef kiss. I love that. And slightly perverted, I know. So now we get to the meat of the order. So here we go. Number 30 is a movie that a lot of people probably don't remember too much about, but it's Outbreak. Dustin Hoffman, and I can't remember who else was in it. It had a big cast in it, but basically it was Wolfgang Peterson, who did Air Force One and a few other movies as well. And In the Line of Fire, he directed this one as well, I believe. And basically it's about an outbreak of a disease which is starting to, this is before COVID, so a whole pandemic that happens, and the CDC group that's trying to stop it. Also starring in it is Capuchin Monkey Marcel from Friends. And he was the monkey who was the one who was spreading the disease. So Outbreak is a fun, tense, epidemic, pandemic thriller. Though after what happened 5 years ago with COVID, this may not be the best movie to watch. That and Contagion's another one that at its time was a well-received, interesting movie, but after we actually lived through something like that, people might not like it as much. But it's still a tense action science thriller in the vein of a Michael Crichton Andromeda Strain sort of thing. And Dustin Hoffman playing kind of a, I think Rene Russo's in it also, playing kind of an action star a little bit is pretty cool. So it's definitely has its moments. Is not all blah, blah, blah stuff. There's actually a lot of good action, stuff like that. And again, one I haven't seen in a while, but I just remember enjoying it when I saw it. Number 29 is another one a lot of people probably don't know much about. Did you know that Eddie Murphy, this is around the time when he was starting to, he was hot in the 80s and he started to cool off in the early 90s. So he decided to do some kid stuff. So he did The Nutty Professor and Dr. Dolittle, and those sort of brought him back to prominence. He was no longer doing like the rated R action comedy sort of films. And when he did do them, they did not do very well. But the kids ones he did. But being an actor, you know, Eddie Murphy doesn't want to keep staying at a one tone, so he decided he wanted to go in a different direction and try something else. And that was when Wes Craven came calling. Wes Craven, horror director, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Scream movies, rest in peace, Wes, had a movie idea called Vampire in Brooklyn. And Eddie Murphy wanted to play the lead vampire, and I believe Angela Bassett's in it also. And so Eddie Murphy plays the bad guy basically in Vampire in Brooklyn. It is a horror comedy. So there is comedy in it, but it sticks mostly more towards the horror aspect of a vampire film. This Halloween, I've already decided I'm going to do a best vampire films of all time. This one will probably be on the list as well. I kind of need to rewatch it again because it's starting to fade on me a little bit. But again, like with Outbreak, I truly remember enjoying this movie immensely. And it was interesting seeing Eddie Murphy trying something different. And I don't know if it was very successful. I don't think it was. But it's still a fun, entertaining movie, and one you might not have heard of before, and definitely should check it out. Don't know where you would be able to see it. That's why I still get physical media, and why I still, to this day, will push physical media, is that I don't know where Vampire in Brooklyn is playing. Don't know where Outbreak is playing. Might be playing on Netflix, might be playing on Prime, might be playing somewhere else, or it might not be playing at all. And if you're interested in wanting to see it, if you don't have a physical copy, you're kind of screwed now, aren't you? Because not every movie is going to be on streaming and any of the streaming channels. A lot of them are, sure, but not everyone is. And even if they are, they change them up. Most recently, the Robin Hood story, the one that Ridley Scott did with Russell Crowe, they changed the opening. There was like an opening line that was written on the screen before it went to live action. They deleted that. So that's not cool. But Vampire in Brooklyn is definitely one you should dig up and try to find. Maybe closer to Halloween, obviously. And I'll probably, as I said, when I do my top vampire movies in October, will probably be one that I will be talking about again. And hopefully maybe by then I'll be able to watch it, because I believe it is in one of those videos I have back there. So, because I know I have the physical copy of it. Number 28 is interesting because 1995 was a good year for Sandra Bullock. And we'll talk about one of the other movies that she was in 1995 much later in the show. You probably know which one I'm talking about, but up till now, she had only been doing some supporting roles. She did that one supporting role in the one Wesley Snipes, something, Destination Man or something like that. Wesley Snipes, Sylvester Stallone movie. She sort of made her presence felt there, and with Speed also in 94. She made her presence felt there. So Sandra Bullock got into really sort of the stratosphere, much like how Adam Sandler did in 1995 with two movies. One we'll talk about later, obviously, and you know which one that is probably. But then there's this one that decided to, that was made that they were probably just going to dump somewhere. But once her popularity started to skyrocket, it's like, well, we just release it during the summer in like July and see what happens. And it skyrocketed because the movie that really made her came out much earlier. So she was still getting to be a big star. So anything with her in it was going to be a huge thing. And The Net, number 28, was that a early, remember, it's 1995. It is back when computers were still not as powerful as they are now. And the internet was still kind of in its infancy and stuff like that. But this is a computer thriller in 1995, computer like speak and stuff like that. It's a fascinating look at a time before what we're all used to now. And Sandra Bullock is her straight up doing an action film where she discovers something and then gets her life totally erased. And she has to fight back to try to get her life back. It's a really interesting thriller and a definite left turn for Sandra Bullock you didn't expect, but a lot of people still remember her from Speed and not the other movie we're going to talk about in a little bit. And so it wasn't that outrageous, but the fact is that it was an action film about computers and computers in 1995, which is nothing like they were now, and still makes it a fairly interesting movie. Same with like War Games in 1983, when computers were just starting around. Also, they made a fairly taut thriller out of that. The Net is up there as well, and it's a game performance by Sandra Bullock. Not her best, but still a fun diversion on a summer day if you're bored and have nothing else to do, and if you can find it, obviously. And just a for you youngins out there, just to see how things were for your elders back in 1995, 30 years ago. I want to check this out real quick. I forgot something here. I should have done this before. That's right. Y'all know this. It's Rex Manning Day. And y'all know, if you've watched this movie, you know what that stands for. Number 27 is Empire Records. Again, a 30 years ago film, which is a snapshot of what life was like in the mid-90s when record stores were still around, but were starting to struggle a little bit because CD was becoming a whole lot easier to buy, and there was easier ways to get it. So Empire Records is just basically about a record shop that is in danger of going out of business. So they're able to get a Rex Manning to come in, who was a 1980s heartthrob musician, to play a concert and do a signing at their store as they're getting ready to close everything down. And things go from bad to worse when it comes to that. Game cast, Liv Tyler, Anthony LaPaglia, a few other in there as well, and of course, the old Rex Manning. So a really interesting snapshot into the mid '90s. It's in essence, it is still a teen movie before the teen movies really started to take off again, which was in the 1990s, 97, 98, 96. I think it's 96, about a year later. 96. So this was kind of a starting point for it a little bit, but it's a teen film. With a game early 20s cast, and it spawned its own holiday, Rex Manning Day. Great soundtrack for fans of 1990s music. It is an outstanding soundtrack of hits of bands that were huge hits in the 1990s. Great songs on it, and just a general great premise and a good storyline. Empire Records, number 27. Number 26 is Tony Scott, Ridley Scott's brother, who is one of my favorite action film directors, decided to do a taut submarine thriller called Crimson Tide that stars two of the giants in our industry, Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington, as they butt heads on a naval submarine where they're doing maneuvers, and a code comes over the line that America is being attacked and they need to launch their nuclear arsenal to save them, but the message gets cut off. So Gene Hackman's the captain, Denzel Washington's his first in command. They have a disagreement about what they should do because, launching nuclear missiles on an enemy, if it's just a practice, because lead up to this point, there was like no aggression. When there's going to be probably a nuclear attack, it's not going to be one of those things where they're just going to say, oops, we're launching a nuclear missile at you. No, there'll be a lead up to it. There'll be, tensions building between these countries, stuff like that. It's not just going to say, oh, fuck it, I'm going to blow you up. So Denzel, going from that thought, was like, it was cut off. We need to go to higher depth and get the message again. So we realized that if this is just a test, or are we actually going to war? And Gene Hackman, being the old school sort of army dude, it's like, no, we have to follow orders and launch our arsenal right now. It's an old school old soldier versus new soldier, but it also has an underlying racial tone since Denzel's black, Gene Hackman's white, and the crew on the Crimson Tide. It's Crimson Tide is the name of the submarine, but the name on the submarine is sort of evenly split down the middle. It's a very taut, very high-strung boiler pot thriller based within a confined area. That is the type of movie that you're going to watch and you're going to cringe, because it's just, the acting is phenomenal, and just the pure, there's not one right or wrong person in this. They both are right and both could be wrong also. They're not pushing Denzel as the one who is the savior and all that. It's more of a look at relations between older soldiers and the newer ones. And again, as I said, sort of an underlying racial bit in there as well. Quentin Tarantino supposedly did a slight rewrite on it, added a few sequences there, script doctored it. Carrie Fisher did it all the time, so it's not the big a deal. Didn't get too much warranted on there. And it's more about, it was one of the things that they always bring up is the Silver Surfer discussion, and the fact that they had him comparing, I think it was Buscema versus Mobius for Silver Surfer. Mobius only drew 2 issues of the Silver Surfer. You should have done Buscema versus somebody else, like a Ron Lim or something like that, to see who the better Silver Surfer artist was. But I digress. Crimson Tide, again, is one of those cringeworthy, in a good way, taut thrillers, handled perfectly by a fantastic director in Tony Scott, and led by 2 outstanding actors in Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. Number 25, I talked about a little bit before. Last time I did a list show is Batman Forever. It's Val Kilmer's only appearance as Bruce Wayne Batman. Chris O'Donnell made his first appearance as Robin. We get Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. And we get Jim Carrey as the Riddler. And I think Drew Barrymore has a cameo in there as well as one of Two-Face's girlfriends. And Nicole Kidman plays the love interest. But it retains the actor who played Commissioner Gordon, and it also retained Michael Gough as Alfred from the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton ones. So that sort of connects it. Pat Hingle is the guy who played Commissioner Gordon. That sort of connects this movie to the Tim Burton ones. Riddler's my favorite character. Jim Carrey was woefully miscast as Riddler. And people who know me, this is one thing I always spout off about. I thought he was Joker light. I thought he was awful. I thought he was too much chewing the scenery. Was too much Jim Carrey. He was, as I said, he was the hottest thing in the world right now. And to get him into a Batman movie was a major coup. I get that. But it's a terrible decision to put him as the Riddler. Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face was competent, but again, not quite exactly what I was looking for. Aaron Eckhart's version of Two-Face was much closer to what I would be expecting in the Nolan ones, because you have to remember that Harvey Dent, before he became Two-Face, was considered to be one of the people who was Batman. And you need to have that sort of quality about them, someone who has that that feeling of justice. and willing to maybe break the law to make sure that justice is followed and happens. And so he has sort of roughly the same build as Batman and sort of the same sort of attitude as, so it would make sense to think that Harvey Dent potentially could be Batman. If you play it that way, that's the way they did it in the comics. It's the way it should be done. Tommy Lee Jones is a little too old. He's got the lawyer aspect to it. And again, he was kind of sort of hammy about it, but he was a little bit better than Jim Carrey was. Nicole Kidman, who is my fellow June 20th baby, and I love her because it's ingrained in us. We all have this connection. She was very sexy. She was very horny for Batman, which is okay, but kind of throws things off. In the name like Chase Meridian, it's like turning into a James Bond girl. But she looks gorgeous, and she does what she can in the movie. Chris O'Donnell as Robin was fine. He was just too old to be Robin. I think he would have been a much better Nightwing. I liked his attitude, but I also think he needed to trim down the anger a little bit more, because Dick was anger early on. And you kind of needed to, and Dick never really thought that he was in the shadow of Bruce and needed to be better than Bruce, which is what spirals out in the Batman and Robin. He was always someone who did what he was told, but he was generally a decent guy. And Chris O'Donnell, I said, would have been a perfect Nightwing. He was just too old to play Robin. Good introduction to him as Robin. And they made him a little bit too much like Jason Todd, to be honest, in my opinion. If you dial back some of the anger and the aggressiveness, stuff like that, you might get a decent Dick out of that. But in this case, it's decent enough. It's good enough. It's successful enough. Val Kilmer as Batman is phenomenal. He has the brooding down 100% perfect. He's got the voice. He's got the look. Except what he needs to show some of that humor he had during Real Genius and Top Secret, because Batman is not all dour and depressed and stuff like that. He is a charming, very handsome, successful, fun guy. And we didn't really get that look from him. We just got sort of a straight up, sort of depressed, sort of Val Kilmer, even in his scenes as Bruce Wayne with Chase Meridian, Nicole Kidman's Chase Meridian, didn't quite have the same pop as you would expect or you would have wished. Still, he was decent, and I wish under a better writer and a better director, it would have been interesting. Joel Schumacher had the impossible. He had to take over for Tim Burton once Michael Keaton was phased out, and Burton didn't want to do a third one. And they were going to go in a different direction. And this was the beginning of turning it back into the campy 1960s Batman, which is not what any of us wanted to see. We wanted to keep going with the dark Burton fantasy that they had going, but they decided to twist it up a little bit. And bringing Schumacher in, you thought might be good. He's the guy that did a bunch of these dark Flatliners and Lost Boys and all these sort of darker things. You thought he would do something like that, but he decided to go in a different direction and do a little bit more colorful, campy sort of stuff. And I think that was a wrong decision. I think a Joel Schumacher, now supposedly there is a Joel Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, which is much better, which cuts out a lot of the campiness. I cannot attest to that because I have not seen it, or I don't think anybody's seen it. But Schumacher could potentially have been a decent successor to Tim Burton and I think this wasn't totally Joel's fault. I think he was sort of forced by producers to, hey, let's get back to the campiness again because Batman Returns was just way too dark. Let's get back to some of the campiness to get some of those people to come there. And that was the absolutely wrong thing to do. And you see the result of that in Batman and Robin, which was an absolute disgrace of a movie, but that's besides the point. Batman Forever is decent, but not phenomenal. You could sort of make it sort of as like the Spider-Man 3 of the Batman saga, because Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire and Venom and Sandman and all that stuff is bad, but it's not terrible. And that's kind of what Batman Forever is. That's why it's at number 25. Number 24, you're probably going to get a lot of hate for this. And I know the history. I'm a fucking history major. So, yes, I know this shit. I've done the readings. I know my history. It's not, not been, white coated or blindsided or gaslit or whatever. I know Pocahontas was not a sexy, like 18-year-old teenager whose one true love was John Smith. And that's what the Disney Pocahontas movie at number 24 did. That being said, it is a absolutely stunningly gorgeous animated film set in the early times of North America before the colonists came to colonize everything. Gorgeous scenery, decent music, decent songs, and just, typical sort of storyline, people from opposite, lives find each other, fall in love, and then things get thrown in their path that disrupts their love. Yes, it is a highly romanticized version of the Pocahontas story. And to get Mel Gibson, who is a total douchebag now, to voice John Smith, who at the time, Mel Gibson was one of the star actors of that era in the 90s. And look, to be honest, I hate him as a person, but there are still some good movies that I do enjoy of his. Maverick, for one, so on and so forth. And Signs is another one, stuff like that. And I like this one. I like Pocahontas. Gorgeous, as I say, gorgeous scenery, great animation. Again, I know that it was whitewashing the history. I know about that, changing the history to make it sort of more romantic sort of thing. But it's still a fun Disney film. And if you go in just expecting typical Disney film, you should have a good time. It is gorgeous and it's good music. I don't think there's any bad songs on it. They're just not memorable like the ones in other ones. They're decent. They're just not outstanding, if you know what I mean. Pocahontas, number 24. Number 23 is Clueless. This one had been building for a while. Alicia Silverstone was getting a lot of press from her Aerosmith videos, and she did a couple movies here and there. But when Clueless was introduced and Amy Heckerling was going to direct it, and people were thinking this was going to change Alicia Silverstone's life, which it did for a while, and then she sort of lost the way 5-6 years later. But Clueless was, a typical mid-90s romantic comedy about a bunch of rich, privileged kids based on a Jane Austen adaptation. I think it's Emma. They did a version of Emma where Alicia Silverstone plays match set for herself, and she has. All right, there we go. Good. Sorry about that. That was a reconnecting issue. It's good thing I didn't shut it down. But Clueless is fun. It's still weird. It's still weird seeing Paul Rudd as her, not really stepbrother, because they were stepbrother and stepsister a while back. Alicia Silverstone's father had married Paul Rudd's mother, but had divorced her very quickly. And Alicia Silverstone's dad was on like the next batch of wives. He had already passed through 2 other wives since, but Paul Rudd still came around because he still liked her dad, and he was also interested in law, and he was a lawyer. And of course, her dad, played by Dan Hedaya, who's fantastic in this movie, has lines that you divorce wives, not children, which is a great line. That even though he's divorced from the wife, even though he's not his genetic son, he still likes to help, treat him like a son, talks to him, gives him money, sends him a card on his birthday, and trying to get him to become a lawyer. So Paul Rudd's gathering around, but it's weird seeing Paul Rudd in some of his earlier stuff. A pretty stellar cast in this as well of young stars. Again, up there with Empire Records. You get sort of this youth movement is starting to build up a little bit. And Clueless does help out with that a lot. Again, typical sort of romantic comedy stuff. A little awkward here and there, considering what happens in the end with Paul Rudd and Alicia Silverstone being stepbrother, stepsister. It's like a setup for a porn movie, but that's besides the point. the main key about this is Dan Hedaya is fantastic as her dad, and is always I did a list of best dads in the world. I might do that again. I think I did that with Jerry, my former co-host of the List Show years ago. Dan Hedaya is one of the best movie dads out there, and he's fantastic, and I love that, and I love him for that. Wallace Shawn is fantastic in that it's one of Alicia Silverstone's teachers. You got Donald Faison, you got Stacey Dash, you've got what the fuck is his name? He's you get God damn it. There's just a ton of huge stars in this. Where are you? Clueless. Brittany Murphy, before she passed away. Breckin Meyer, that's another one. Jeremy Sisto, Twink Kaplan. Those are really the only really famous ones out there that I can see. But it definitely great cast, a typical sort of rom-com. It has some cringy moments to it, and it's very California speak. And some of the stuff they say, they were trying to force too much to try to be, taglines or whatever that people use all the time. But some of them came out. But Clueless is still fun, and it's interesting to see Paul Rudd then and see Paul Rudd now. It's like he's barely aged, which is really funny. Number 22 is Mallrats, Kevin Smith's second movie. Clerks was a definite indie film, filmed in black and white, off hours at the place where Kevin Smith actually worked. It was just sexual discussions, and that was really all it was. It was just really a talky movie with some comedy. It's funny, and it made a lot of money. So they said, Kevin Smith is a guy we need to keep an eye on. Let's see what he can do with some real budget. So they gave him like $2 million to make his next movie, which was Mallrats, number 22 on my list. He was able to get a little bit of star power. Shannon Doherty, the London brothers, like one of them, Jason or Jeremy London, was in there. And then this was the first movie. I think Ben Affleck has an appearance in this as well, before he was huge and became a bigger part of Kevin Smith's entourage. Jason Lee also was one of the first times that he worked with Kevin Smith and became part of Smith's entourage. Of course, Jason Mewes still playing Jay. It was Jeremy London, Ben Affleck, Claire Filoni, Joey Laurie Adams, Ethan Suplee, Shannon Doherty, Scott Mosier, Stan Lee, Michael Rooker, Brian O'Halloran, Brian Johnson, Priscilla Barnes, Walt Flanagan. So you've got a decent cast. Jason Scott Lee, Gavin Rosedale. You've got a decent cast. The story is typical Kevin Smith sort of stuff. It actually is an Easter movie, to be honest, and it takes place at a mall, and it's about couples that are in various shapes and forms of distress, and they go to the mall and other things start happening. Ben Affleck's an asshole in this movie. And it's just a entertaining thing. And then Stan Lee is one of the first Stan Lee cameos that you're ever going to see is actually more of a cameo. He has a discussion with Jason Lee's character. So definitely not Kevin Smith's strongest movie, and still not one of his better ones. Would be a tail end of a top 10 list. If I did a Kevin Smith one, I don't think I've done a Kevin Smith one yet. It's on my to-do list, but Mallrats would be up there, but not high, maybe the 8-7 window. Still entertaining, and again, I need to get my daughter to see some Kevin Smith stuff because I want to see her to do Dogma, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I need to get her sort of in there. Mallrats is just it's your typical. It's what you get when you give Kevin Smith $2 million. He signs his buddies. He signs young cast members who soon become members of his entourage. Meets his girlfriend there for the first time. Joey Laurie Adams was his girlfriend for the longest time before he married Jennifer Swalbach. But it's still entertaining, and it's actually a decent Shannon Doherty performance. Michael Rooker before Yondu, before Walking Dead, playing typical sort of asshole sort of role. Stanley cameo is really sweet, and your typical sort of Kevin Smith stuff. So Mallrats number 22. Number 21 is Strange Days. Catherine Bigelow directed it. One of the only female directors to win an Oscar, not for this movie, but for one down the line. Based on a story by James Cameron. Ray Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Tom Sizemore, Juliette Lewis are the main cast. It's a decent premise. Remember, this is 95. It says this takes place at the turn of the century, so it takes place in 99, the New Year's Eve of 1999. It's weird that this is 5 years before the turn of the century, but the movie is sort of makes you believe that in 5 years the world is going to turn into some sort of futuristic, high technology thing, which it really honestly didn't. Computers just got bigger or smaller, I should say. Cell phones, stuff like that started forming, but not anywhere near what they had in here. They were a little bit ahead of their time, though, and they have a very intriguing premise where the main technological thing is you have these glasses or something that records stuff from your POV, and it creates like little it's saved on like little we call it like little saving device, like little saving things that you slide in your cameras, like batteries and stuff. Not batteries, but like it saves them on that. And basically Ray Fiennes plays a pusher, like a drug dealer, but the drug is getting these little memories from people and selling them to people. So they pay like a actor to fuck a porn star, and you see everything from their point of view. But they also have a neural net set up so that you feel everything that they feel. So basically, you steal or get this little cartridge from this film star who fucked a porn star, and then you sell it to someone who then injects it into his core, and it's from his perspective, and he feels like he is having sex with this porn star. There's like sensor neural nets in there, so he feels everything that is going on, from the orgasms to the thrusting and stuff like that. I'm just giving that example because it is a very violent sexual film, because the premise is, and it's a great premise, a serial killer has been using the neural net to do POVs of him killing his victims. And then he sells it or secretly gets it to the pushers, who discover it and discover that they are having the feelings of the serial killer, or he also flips it around where he puts it into the mind of the person he's killing, and then they feel the sense of them getting killed and stuff like that. So you sort of do both. So this psychopath is sort of doing both a little bit, and so he sells it to these pushers who don't know what's on it, but he tests his product before he sees it. So then he realizes that there's something going on. There's a serial killer that is taunting him with these crimes, stuff like that. So he has to work with Angela Bassett, who's like his bodyguard, to try to solve the case before the turn of the century, when something big's going to happen. It's a very dark, it's a very violent, it's a very sort of sexual sort of movie, but it is decent. It is unique and entertaining, would be considered possibly a high concept for my high concept list. And it's an intriguing one and an interesting cast. Strange Days, number 21. Number 20 is a movie that got a lot of bad word of mouth before it even came out, due to the actor who was in it and due to the budget going way over for the time what it was supposed to. And everybody was contemplating that, this movie is going to tank. It's going to suck because the budget was so high, and the movie was going to be awful and terrible. And then, just for shits and giggles, say, let's just see how bad it is when it first came out. And they came to the theater, they watched the movie, they come out there like, you know what? That movie really wasn't that bad. That movie is number 20. It's Waterworld. Yes, I know. It's everyone makes the same joke, and people still believe the joke that it was a shitty movie. Yes, it had its issues filming on water. And Kevin Costner was at the time 5 years off from winning his Oscars. He had a attitude issue. Kevin Reynolds was his friend, was directing it, and he was disagreeing with everything Kevin Reynolds was doing on the movie. And then Costner wanted to be the star, where he's playing sort of against type. He's sort of an action star sort of type, a half amphibious, half human man in a futuristic world where the ice caps have melted and the world is covered entirely by oceans with little pockets of dry land, which is the key to the movie, is that there is a young girl played by Tina Margarina who has the tattoo on her back of a map of the only place where there's dry land. And so he kidnaps, so people are trying to get her to try to find this dry land, to try to take it over and see, take it and be the ones that can rule and sort of thing and be done with living on the water. And Costner is this amphibious guy who is sworn to try to protect them and to get his own way to get these people to dry water. Facing off against Dennis Hopper in his full-on speed bad guy mode. It's a decent movie. It actually is a lot better than you think it is. And it's still a good, steady action film, but the whole behind-the-scenes stuff is forever going to be clouded on it. Yes, it was a $200 million budget film, which in 95, I guess if you increase it for spending right there, it'd be like, on par with what they're kind of spending now. So if this movie came out now with a budget of like 300 million or whatever, it wouldn't be considered that much big a deal, because the Avengers movies are like $500 million, something like that, to make, or something like that on a budget or something like that. So at the time, though, $200 million for a budget was huge. Everybody was expecting to be a huge flop. It actually, I don't know if it actually turned a profit, but it actually, if it lost money, it was not a lot. It actually did decent. I don't think it lost any money, actually, because I think it did very well worldwide, and it actually did well in America. I think it did 175 in America, which is actually decent for a film, if I recall correctly. So Waterworld's still an entertaining movie, and just ignore all the noise about the behind the scenes stuff. Yes, it did happen. Yes, it was, a shitty time. And yes, the budget did skyrocket, but watch the movie. It's actually a very, very fun action film and is decent. And check that out. Number 19. I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, but I have to put it on the list because it is an icon. Number 19 is Seven. David Fincher, after his disastrous Alien 3 debacle, which wasn't entirely his fault, he decided he wanted to do something different. So he directed this really dark script from Andrew something Walker, who ended up writing Sleepy Hollow eventually. And it's just a basic serial killer film with a great cast of Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman, and Kevin Spacey's in it as well. And Gwyneth Paltrow, who was dating Brad Pitt at the time, maybe might have been married at that time, I'm not sure. And it's about a serial killer whose modus operandi is killing people via the 7 deadly sins. And every crime scene is gruesome. And it takes place in a rainy, dark, dreary town. There's just a huge sense of dread, from the grisly murders to the constant rain to the sort of, they still love each other, but there's sort of a little thing between Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow's characters. They're married, but they sort of have some issues. Morgan Freeman is 7 days away from retirement and just wants to leave all this behind and retire gracefully, but he ends up getting stuck with this last case, and it does a number on him as well. It is a dark, dreary film, and it's so funny, and it's done deliberately by Fincher, that the finale takes place in the bright sun of a desert without any rain, dry desert, sunny, bright out there. It is really grisly. It is very violent. It is an intense serial movie. It's one that I saw once. I'm probably never going to see it again, because it just, and even now, even before I started doing this, you still periodically, when I'm working or whatever, you have thoughts of just what the serial killer is capable of, what he did. Glutton. He forcibly fed somebody food. He's very, takes his time. He's very methodical serial killer. He kept feeding his captive over and over. It just kept forcing food down there, even through him vomiting and not being able to eat till his stomach exploded. In the adultery one, he forced a guy who was having an affair with a woman to put on a dildo that was like a knife and had to consistently keep fucking his girlfriend with the knife cock, even and he was kept forcing him, even though she was screaming for him to stop. He had to keep going till she was dead. That's the kind of shit that we have to deal with. It's really disturbing shit. And another interesting aspect of it is that there's a stunt that Brad Pitt does where he actually breaks his wrist or something like that. Instead of shutting down the film for it, they just added it to the film. So that's why Brad Pitt has like a cast on his arm through the majority of the movie. So, because it's a real injury. It's a grisly, dark, disturbing movie. And Andrew Walker did 8mm, which is another fucking disturbing film. And Sleepy Hollow is disturbing, but it was there was another writer involved with it that sort of lessened the darkness of it. But man, this dude, my dude, you need to take care of yourself. It is I recommend maybe you see it once for your own, and you might like it more than I do. People seem to love the movie and say that they like watch it over and over again. Of like, what are you, some sort of sick psychopath? That sort of stuff. I mean, yes, it's a good film. It's well directed, well written, interesting premise, great cast, but it's a awful movie when it comes to the storyline. Brad Pitt makes his second appearance on the list with number 18, 12 Monkeys, which is another bizarre little film, but not quite as bad as some of the other ones. Terry Gilliam directed it. Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt involved in this. Filmed partially here in Baltimore and Philadelphia. Basic premise is another pandemic happens where it's wiped out like 1% of, or like 99% of the population or something like that. And the people who are surviving are underground now. And there are still, some criminals, stuff like that, were able to survive it as well. So the people who are in control now are sending criminals up to the surface in these special things to try to figure out a way to find a cure for this, or to see if it's clear for them to come back up and take records of the stuff like that. And then they come up with an idea of, why don't we take one of these prisoners and have him time travel back in time, because they've created time travel at this time, to travel back in time to stop the pandemic from happening, so they don't have to deal with this, or at least find out how the pandemic started, and then they can take it from there. But as you can't have a movie without a situation. So something happens and they send them back to the wrong time twice, and it doesn't quite work, and things get mixed up and things get twisted, stuff like that. But it is definitely a unique film. Some really interesting Terry Gilliam-esque qualities to it, which adds to its uniqueness. Great performance by Bruce Willis, but Brad Pitt steals the movie in a role that is totally un-Brad Pitt. Seven, he was still kind of the brooding, sexy, sort of beaten up, sort of guy, but he was still kind of a sexy sort of dude. And that's what really all he had been doing up to that point, was doing like these kind of sexy roles. 12 Monkeys gave him a chance to spread out his acting roles, and he played sort of this crazy sort of guy, rich kid who was in an asylum who has these weird tics. And Brad Pitt is phenomenal. He got an Oscar nomination, I think his first one, for this role. It is amazing how good he is in this movie. He almost steals the movie from Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis is Bruce Willis. He plays it sort of like as if he's in an M. Night Shyamalan movie before he's in an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Very dour, very dark, sort of a little bit close to kind of his character in Pulp Fiction from the year before, but still an absolutely brilliant movie. As I said, filmed partially here in Baltimore, which is outstanding. And now we go so we had Brad Pitt in Seven and into 12 Monkeys. So now we had Bruce Willis in 12 Monkeys into number 17, Bruce Willis in Die Hard with a Vengeance. Die Hard with a Vengeance was the third Die Hard movie. It's actually the first one that does not take place at Christmas. First one where Holly Hunter does not Holly Hunter. Holly Gennaro is her name. I forget the actress who played his wife. Bonnie Bedelia. That she's not in it. And it's basically, it's only Die Hard because John McClane is the main character. And the villain has a connection to Hans Gruber, in this case, played by Jeremy. Jeremy Irons plays the bad guy, who has connection to Alan Rickman's Hans Gruber from the first film. But what makes this film number 17 worthy is not only the difference in, instead of it being in one location, like in an airport or in a Nakatomi Plaza, we have it take place in the city of New York on one of the hottest days of the summer. He's after joining the LA Police Department to be with his wife in the second movie, and then coming to Washington at Christmas time to visit family. He and his wife have split up, and he's gone back to New York Police Department because that's where he was in the original Die Hard. He was back in New York, but he's also drunk now, and so there is a series of bombs that have been going off and during the day in New York City, and the person who's doing the bombing wants John McClane to come to a certain location with this sign, which is has a racial slur on it, put in the middle of Harlem with this racial slur on it, because he wants John McClane to feel pain, or he's going to blow up a children's hospital or something like that. So McClane does it, and Samuel L. Jackson is in it, who happens to play a store owner in the area, comes out to him to try to stop him from doing this before he gets his ass whooped. And then, of course, John McClane tells him what's going on, and then Samuel L. Jackson ends up getting involved with that because the villain has been spying on them and says, since the Good Samaritan is helping, he is now part of the group, and he's going to have to help you, or we're going to blow up this kid's hospital or whatever. So they have to go through a series of tests to get the next clue about where the bomb is located. And it's a tense, high-paced thriller, great chemistry between Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Jeremy Irons is a decent bad guy. The plan is the plan is sort of similar to his brother Hans Gruber's, it ends pretty on a. The way they catch the bad guy is on just a simple thing that if it wouldn't have happened, they would have never caught the bad guy, but it did. It was one of those things. But it's a great, fun, high-stakes action film. Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson really did not have any scenes together in Pulp Fiction, so it was kind of to see them actually be a whole movie together. And it's exactly what you think it's going to be when the two of them get together. It is a fantastic film. Definitely belongs to the Die Hard family. It is that good. And I did see it. We had the day before I graduated, a bunch of us went out to see it because it just had come out that Friday. A bunch of us went to see it at the movie theater. So I always have a memory of that, which connects it to the whole thing about why I'm doing this today now. Number 16 is Babe. Film came out around Thanksgiving from George Miller, who brought just the Mad Max movies. So you expect sort of a Mad Max thing. Instead, you get this heartwarming film about a pig who becomes a sheepdog and helps tend the sheep. And his owner, played by James Cromwell, decides to put him into the sheepdog competition, even though he's a pig. What makes this film unique is that the animals talk. Now, the humans can't hear them. When the animals are talking, it just sounds like the animals are making noise, honk, honk, oink, oink, whatever. But you hear the voices of the animals talking, because the majority of the film is from the animal's perspective. So you need to follow the story about what's going on. It's definitely a cute film. For me, it was still kind of ruined by that god-awful sequel they did, which is more along the lines of what a George Miller movie is, though people love the sequel. I hated it with a passion. Babe, Pig in the City is awful. It is one of my least favorite movies of all time. But the original Babe is not too bad. Definitely decent. A good family film. And that'll do, Pig. That'll do. Number 15, we have The Secret of Rowan Inish, which is a movie that a lot of you are like, what the hell is it doing at number 15? We've never heard of it before. I know you haven't, but it's a film that I watch almost every St. Patrick's Day. It is a wonderful family film, though it does have one or two little bizarre sequences that takes place in, I think, 1940s, 50s Ireland after the World War and the stuff that's going on in the country. And it focuses on a little girl who lost her mother, and her father is not capable of taking care of her or has to work and sees her periodically, but can't be both mother and father because he's got to keep doing his job. Plus he's drinking. He's a drunkard. So she is shipped off to her grandparents' house. Her grandparents, who had been living on an island called Rowan Inish, which is what their family owned for the longest time, were forced off during the war, which they don't really go into much detail with. I guess if you were in Ireland, you would know the history of why that stuff was happening, but they don't really mention why the family was run off of their island, I guess, during the war, to have to go live on land. And they were fishermen, and that was their home, and living on land. They're still near the water, and they're still fishermen, but it doesn't have quite the same feeling. So the grandparents are suffering when it comes to finances, but they do their best to take care of the little girl. And she has her cousin, who is a little bit older than her, but is someone that she can relate to, who's also living with the grandparents because his parents have shipped him off there also, helping their grandfather with the fishing and stuff like that. And so they decide to take her to Rowan Inish because they still can go back to visit, but they just can't live there for some reason. They don't really go into much detail about why they can't. It's off limits or something like that. So they still go periodically to check it out. The animals have sort of overtaken it again, and the husks of the homes that they were built are still standing because they were forced out quickly. So they've had weather damage, and there's issues with it, but they're still fairly sturdy. Her young cousin, who's always known as fishing and known that story, stuff like that, says when he's a man, so obviously he's not quite 18, that he's going to move back to that island and retake it for his family. And so this sort of obsesses, this sort of gets the girl, becomes obsessed with that idea as well. Because we get a little bit of history now here too. Her brother was taken away in a storm when they were leaving the island. He had a little floaty carriage thing. It got floated off to the ocean, and he disappeared. So they don't know what happened to. She doesn't know what happened to her brother, and the grandparents don't know what happened to her grandson, and they're a little bit worried about that. Here's where the Irish mythology comes in hand. We hear stories about the family's past, that that one of their ancestors mated with a seal woman. Now, I forget what they have a specific name, but they are seals that can shed their skin and become gorgeous women, human women, periodically whenever they feel like just getting a little bit out of their skin and just sort of become normal. This one boy watched them, knew about that, and he knew that the way to keep her in her human form was to steal her skin and keep it hidden, and because he fell in love with her. So he steals the skin while she's sleeping, hides it, and then meets her, and they end up getting married, and they have kids that are part this mythological seal woman and human. And it's created a weird sort of DNA in the family. It makes a lot more sense, and it's not as fantastic as you think it is. I'm not explaining it very well. That's why you need to go see it so you can understand it. It's called The Secret of Rowan Inish. And so they believe the brother has sort of this seal woman DNA in her, and that's why he disappeared, because the seals want to spend time with him because he's still technically part of their family as well. So the little girl and her cousin decide that they're going to rebuild the houses on the island. And because her grandparents are going to be losing their house they're in now and have to move further inland where it's cheaper, away from the ocean, which would just kill her grandfather, not literally, but would just kill him. They decide that we're going to take back our home. So her and her cousin work really, really hard to rebuild the house because when she was on the island by herself after her cousin dropped her off there just to explore, she saw her brother alive and well with the seals, and no one believes her except for one of her other cousins down the line who's considered to be crazy anyway. So he's trying to convince his grandparents that if they can go back to the island, which is why the seals have kidnapped the baby in the first place, if they go back to the island and live there, then they'll return the baby to them. So that's sort of the premise of the movie. It is a fantastic freaking movie. Great Irish music, great to watch around St. Patrick's Day. Great Irish mythology, great Irish history involved with it. Gorgeous scenery. No really big name actors in it. It's a outstanding film. And well worth your time. Number 14 is Get Shorty. John Travolta riding the high on his Pulp Fiction history, his popularity from then, his resurgence. So he got Get Shorty, which continued his popularity. A great film based on a novel by, what's his face? Elmore Leonard. Yep. And it's a great film about a bounty hunter, but like a mafia sort of thug who is shakedown artist like that, has to go to Hollywood to shake down someone who stole money from them, from his mafia guys, and he becomes enamored with the life of film because he's been obsessed with film. So he ends up convincing this producer that he has to shake down for money to let him sign on as a producer for his next film, and he has to traverse the world of Hollywood while at the same time trying to hold off the mafia people who are trying to get his money. An outstanding cast: Gene Hackman, Rene Russo, Don Cheadle. Is he in that? I don't think Don Cheadle's in that. No, it's not Don Cheadle. Danny DeVito's in it. John Travolta, Danny DeVito, Gene Hackman, Rene Russo, James Gandolfini, Dennis Farina, Delroy Lindo, David Paymer, Jonathan Grise, Harvey Keitel, that's right, Penny Marshall. They have cameos at the end. I forgot about that. But just in general, just a fun little, great score, great storyline. The only thing that really might make you a little upset is that nothing seems to happen to John Travolta's character. He seems to get away with everything scot-free all the time, and nothing bad really happens to him. But it's a fun, entertaining film. I showed it to my daughter earlier this year and still holds up and still worth it. That's why it's number 14. Number 13 is the rare sequel that actually I like a little bit more than the original film, just slightly bit more, but it's, again, a great cast. It's Follow the Bride Part 2. Steve Martin's and Diane Keaton's remake with... oh, Jesus. God, I hate not knowing. It's not Gary Allen. Oh, that's the other Father of the Bride. No, it's not that one. That's 91. There it is. Charles Shire and Nancy Myers are the directors. That Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Martin Short, Kimberly Williams, Kieran Culkin, George Newborn, Eugene Levy, B.D. Wong, Jane Addams. Those are all sort of the cast members in this. But yeah, as I said, it's a Charles Shire, Nancy Meyers gig when they were still married. Um, and it's a sequel to their remake of the 1950s classic. This one, though, is a remake of Father's Little Dividend, which was kind of the sequel to the 1950s Father of the Bride. And it's a story takes place is about his daughter getting pregnant, and Steve Martin's character, who's already high strung, having to now cope with the fact that he's going to become a grandfather, and he feels like he's too young to be a grandfather. So he starts his midlife crisis early, ends up making love to his wife, and they get pregnant, even though she's middle aged also. And so she's due around the same. She's due a few months after their daughter is, and their daughter's mad at first because, hey, you're ruining this. This is supposed to be about me and my child and stuff like that. But then she soon grows to like the idea and to have someone to work with. So now he's got to take care of both his pregnant wife and his daughter because his son-in-law has sent off to an emergency business thing right near the end of the pregnancy. So he's got to keep an eye on her and his wife. And he gets Martin Short's character from the first movie to come back and help him out as well. And they start to bond as well. It's a fun family to be a part of. If there's they asked you the question, there's a movie family or whatever you could live in, this would be one of the ones I wouldn't mind living into because it is a romanticized version. They're very well off. They're very successful. It's Steve Martin and Diane Keaton, for God's sakes, who are wonderful people in general. Kimberly Williams and Kieran Culkin as their kids are great. And George Newborn's a good son-in-law, and then Martin Short is a little crazy, but he's got a good heart. B.D. Wong's fantastic. So you got a great cast involved with it and a great family dynamic and stuff like that. And it's a wonderful thing. And then, of course, as things happen, as she's the daughter's getting ready to have the baby, the mother also goes into labor early as well. So that becomes sort of a high-strung sort of thing. And that's where he and Martin Short really begin to have their friendship blossom a little bit. And they work together to try to make sure that both women are comfortable and they're taking care. It's a great sequence with the two of them sliding past each other in the doctor's hallway. It's really cool. And Kieran Culkin, who doesn't do much in this one, he did a little bit more in the first one, but he's still there in general because he's a great actor as well. Good supporting role too as a brother. This led to the 2020 Father of the Bride 3, which was just a sort of Zoom sort of thing that was only about maybe 15 minutes long. But I kind of wish they would make it to a movie now because you have Florence Pugh now as the grown-up daughter of Steve Martin and Diane Keaton. She played that role, and that it was like the first time I think I really got to know Florence Pugh before Black Widow. It was like that and Black Widow back to back. So I really got to like Florence Pugh, and now she's one of my favorite actresses, and it would be great to see that. And Kieran Culkin got to be front and center in Father of the Bride 3. And then you have Robert De Niro get introduced into the cast as well. And Kieran Culkin wants to propose to his girlfriend, played by a wonderful African-American actress, so I don't know who it is, whose father is Robert De Niro. And you get to see everybody. You can see Kimberly Williams and George Newbern. And then you get their son, who is played by a musician, is involved. It's a great Zoom call, and I wish they would re-release it somehow, or they would just turn it into a fucking movie because I would pay to see that movie. It's a great fucking cast, and they just could come up with a great storyline. It'd be great. But Father Bride 2 sort of sets all that up, and then you get Eugene Levy as a character in there who sort of takes advantage of Steve Martin during his midlife crisis sort of thing. So it's kind of the only kind of bad guy role in it, but it's not really a bad guy role because he's a businessman and he's just thinking about money and stuff like that. But Father Bride 2 is definitely a worthy sequel to the Nancy Meyers, Charles Shire original. And as always, Steve Martin and Diane Keaton have amazing chemistry. Their family is great. Williams and Culkin, Martin Short, B.D. Wong playing great support as well. It's George Newbern in there as well. It is just an amazing cast. And again, as I said, it's the type of family that I would love to interact with more often and be around all the time. Number 12 is probably one of the greatest action films of all time. Directed by Robert Rodriguez, another June 20th baby, along there with Nicole Kidman I talked about earlier. It's Desperado, the sequel to El Mariachi. It's sequel really only in name because El Mariachi, much like with Kevin Smith and his Clerks, El Mariachi was made for like $6,000, which Robert Rodriguez got by doing a medical test for 30 days where he wrote the script and did the storyboards for it, and while he was in this like medical testing facility, and then he got paid for that, and that's they ended up making the movie. El Mariachi is a fantastic introductory film by a filmmaker, part of the new avant-garde, along with Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino in the early 90s aspect. And then, much like with Mallrats, which was Kevin Smith's second film, Desperado is Rodriguez's second film, which was he basically wanted to kind of remake El Mariachi on a bigger budget, but he changed it enough so that he can be classified as a sequel. So instead of bringing back the actor who played the mariachi in the first film, they bring him back in a cameo role as one of the friends of the mariachi character, who's now played by Antonio Banderas, who is an absolutely phenomenal choice. Great action film, still action hero, still fairly new at that time. He was fairly well known in the South, but not so much in America. He had a few things. He was in Philadelphia, Interview with a Vampire, stuff like that. But he was just starting to get in there, and this sort of catapults him as well. And Rodriguez is friends with Quentin Tarantino, and he was coming hot off of Pulp Fiction, so he cast his buddy Tarantino in a role. He cast Steve Buscemi, who was a Tarantino buddy, in the movie as well. Rodriguez cast Salma Hayek, who is absolutely stunningly sexy, gorgeous. Oh my God, she is the hottest I've ever seen her in this movie. And it's one of her early films also. I'm thinking of Joaquin de Almeida plays the bad guy. Danny Trejo is in it as well. Carlos Gallardo, who was the original mariachi, has an appearance as a friend in here. Carlos Gomez has there. Consuelo Gomez is in there as well. Cheech Marin. So it's a great cast of Mexican Americans, Spanish Americans, whatever, mixed with some of the, Steve Buscemi, Quentin Tarantino sort of stuff. It's actually extraordinarily funny, but also some of the best high kinetic action sequences you've ever seen. And I want to see it again. I want to show my daughter it. But I think the really graphic sex scene in the middle of it between sexy Antonio and sexy Salma Hayek might throw her off a little bit. But it's just so much is so good about it, not just from the action sequences, but some of the ways he shot. There's a sequence where Antonio Banderas' character is in a confession booth at a church and confessing his sins about killing people. And Steve Buscemi, he doesn't, is on the other side, and he slides the door open, and there is a shine. There's a cross cut into the wall that's shining from the sunlight onto Buscemi's cheek. It's outstanding shot. The sequence where Quentin Tarantino goes into the bar run by Cheech Marin, and he tells the stupid ass joke. And the jokes in that whole bar, the bartender never gets killed. And the scene where Antonio Banderas comes in and they think he's just a mariachi. So he opens up his mariachi case. It's just a mariachi guitar. But then the guns come out and they're like, oh shit. And then he pulls out his guns and everybody gets ready to shoot. And Antonio Banderas is just like, he's got his hands up. He's like, wait. And they just click like that. The two guns pop out and start shooting. Oh my God. It is gorgeous. Then after there's a sequence where someone gets killed, the guy comes to mop the floor and mops the wet blood all over. It's hilarious. As I said, Salma Hayek extraordinarily sexy in this movie. We get the crotch rocket, which is a guy has a missile launcher that attaches to his dick, which makes the appearance from Dusk Till Dawn later on in a sequence. But the action sequence is amazing. The scene where he's shooting and he flips onto the car, and just an insanely intense action sequences all over. Desperado is a phenomenal action film, surprisingly hilarious, extraordinarily sexy, and sweaty, and it should get a lot more love than it does. Number 11 is Jumanji, the original with Robin Williams, which set the stage for the current huge popular was it 3 or 4 movies they got going on now with The Rock and Jack Black and Karen Gillan. But the original Jumanji is based on, I guess a children's story about a game that sucks Robin Williams' character into the game, where he has to live inside the game. And then when they play the game, all the stuff that's happening in the game actually comes into the real world, and then he gets sucked into the game. And then years later, Kirsten Dunst and her brother find the game, and they open it up, and they have to continue playing it, and they have to play it to the end, and they find the woman who worked with them, who's now, I forget the actress name. I love her too, but I can't think of her right now. Bonnie Hunt. And Robin Williams' character comes sucked out of the game, and he's brought back to life, and they have to finish playing the game. It is Joe Johnston, who is an underrated director, did The Rocketeer, did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and did this movie, and did the original Captain America, the first Avenger, directs this movie. It is a fun family film. Robin Williams, fantastic. Bonnie Hunt's amazing. Kirsten Dunst and her brother are great. And just the stuff that they did, the special effects, the stuff they have to deal with, everything like that. The ending is phenomenal. I really, really like this movie a lot. And it's one of Robin Williams, is probably one of his best movies out there. It's number 11. Reason why it's number 11 and not in the top 10 is because the top 10, number 10 is Heat, also considered one of the best action films of all time. The first film to actually have De Niro and Pacino, two monsters of cinema, face to face from each other, doing a scene together, and is one of the best scenes ever put to film. And Val Kilmer, again, his second appearance on the list, playing massive support to the film, and just an entirely great cast. There's too many other cast members to name that are in this film, but it's a Michael Mann film. It's a 3-hour action film. Great performances by De Niro, Pacino, Val Kilmer, and just a great, more grown-up sort of adult action film than you usually expect. It's not your typical sort of brainless action film you're used to from the 80s and early 90s. This has a little bit more of a girth to it, a little bit more emotional aspect to it, a more psychological aspect to it. It is a phenomenal film, and I'm probably going to rewatch it during my summer rewatch, which I got to tell you about real quick. I've talked about it on my show before, and I figure I'll bring it up now. My wife and kids will be at Scout Summer Camp for a whole week, the week of July 4th, and I'm taking that week off of work. And the plan now is to just watch movies for that whole week for the most part. July 4th, I'll go visit family and stuff like that. My family will be back on the 5th, that Saturday. But on July 4th, that Friday, I will be going to see family, but I'll probably be watching some patriotic films like a Forrest Gump or Dave or an Independence Day sort of thing. But I'm planning on watching tons of movies during this week. I do not plan really to leave the house all that much. Again, this is just my plan right now. I've got a list of all the movies I want to watch, and some of them ones I'm going to watch over again. Heat is part of that list of ones I want to rewatch again, because it's been a while since I've seen it. And with Val Kilmer's death earlier this year, it'd be kind of nice to revisit it as well. So you'll hear more about Heat probably around my July 4th episode, because I'll be doing a massive review episode if I end up watching all the movies that I plan on doing. So. But yes, definitely Heat is worth it, and should definitely be checked out. And the sequel, Michael Mann has written the sequel based on his own novel, so we'll probably see a sequel to this coming up sooner than later. Number 9 is probably a film a lot of people don't also know about. It's a small Richard Dreyfuss film called Mr. Holland's Opus, which basically follows a career of a teacher from the 1960s through present day 1990, over a 30-year span. About a music teacher who is a composer and is working on his opus, which is his biggest musical piece out there. He's been working on it forever, and he and his wife just got married, and they have their own first apartment and stuff like that. And in order to bulk up their money, because they bought this apartment, he needs to get a job. So he gets a job as a teacher, a music teacher, because he loves music and he knows how to do it. because he figures he'll have the summers off, because teachers have summers off, and he can work on his composing all during the summer and then make the money during the fall. But he learns that being a teacher is more than coming to show up for work, teaching for the day, and then moving on the next day, that you actually have to become engulfed in your students' lives and also become involved in other aspects of it, teaching driver's ed, doing the marching band and doing all stuff, so that his free time starting to dwindle a lot more. And then throw on top of that, that they want to have kids. His wife gets pregnant, so now they have to move into a house. So he's got to continue to do this. But it shows his growing love of, when he starts off being, God, this is terrible that I'm forced to be doing this, to that he could not see doing anything else in his life except for helping these students. It is one of the rare films that'll make you tear up, make me tear up. Dramatic, funny, just thought-provoking, historical, because it covers 60s through the 90s. You go through a little bit of everything, and then his son turns out to be deaf. Spoiler alert. So that fucks him up even more, because he wants his son to experience music, but he really can't because he's deaf and doesn't know how to handle working with a kid who has a disability. And he and his wife are starting to clash a little bit. He flirts with a student who has really good musical ability. He makes friends with the gym teacher, football coach. He does him favors, and the gym teacher does him favors. You could deal with Vietnam. You deal with kids on drugs. Teaching kids, one of the best sequences. William H. Macy plays the most uptight vice principal you're ever going to see, because that's what they were back in the 60s. He's a similar character they did in that one film that he was in with Tobey Maguire, and Reese Witherspoon, where it's black and white and then it turns to color as their emotional awakening happens. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. But it's a similar character to that. Olympia Dukakis, the late Olympia Dukakis, plays the principal of the school. But no, Richard Dreyfuss knows his kids are bored with learning about the classics, so he decides to get to them to start playing rock and roll. But in their school district, that's not really considered very well. So he's got to sort of level that sort of out there. So it's a lot with music, a lot with history, a lot with the drama of life itself. It's a phenomenal movie, and as I said, it's one that. It spans about 30 years in a teacher's career, and a lot of stuff happens in between the stuff, and it is emotionally taxing, but it's also funny. It's romantic. It's sad, and it's such a overwhelmingly great movie. Mr. Holland's Opus is number 9. Number 8 is probably one of the, I know I keep saying this all the time, but we're doing the best of 1995. It's one of the best thriller movies you've ever seen, with a killer twist at the end that I caught just like 2 seconds before the actual reveal, when they were focusing on the printout, the fax machine, or the printout of the face of what Kaiser Soze looks like. And before we actually got to see anything, I was like, it's got to be that guy. And I said it right before you saw the picture, and you're like, yes, that's exactly what it is. So I caught it just about the same time as the police chief caught it as well. Usual Suspects is number 8. Gabriel Byrne, Kevin Spacey, one of the Baldwins. I can't think of it right now. My mind doesn't work right. Kevin Pollak, Pete Postlethwaite. I can't think of the police officer right now. Dan Hidea's in it, who's great in it as well. And the most shit. Oh my God, I hate that I don't remember all this stuff. I used to know all this stuff off the top of my head. Benicio del Toro, Gabriel Byrne, Stephen Baldwin, Chaz Palminteri, Giancarlo Esposito, Susie Amos, Clark Gregg is in it. Okay, I did not know that. But yeah, so just it's basically the plot is about a bunch of small time thieves, one who is supposedly going straight, get thrown into a lineup about someone who robbed a police what do you call it, a armored car. Um, but it was really a ploy by Kaiser Soze, who is a mysterious um, ghost story of a guy who is supposedly the one who like runs all of some of the greatest organized crime stuff, and no one knows what he looks like, and to find out that he made this lineup so that he get them together to help to force them to do a job for him, even though they wouldn't have done it because it's high risk. And they end up deciding to take the job because it's a big payoff, and we learn about the setup and all the stuff. So how they prep for the job and what actually happens, so like that. It's a great film that follows a group of small time burglars as they are doing the whims of a mysterious urban legend of a organized crime boss, with again killer twist ending, which I won't ruin here, but most people already know what it is. But it is phenomenal film directed by Bryan Singer. Unfortunately, because of his issues, it's a shame, but it is an amazing film. Highly recommended. I watched it a few times since it came out. I'm due for a rewatch, though it's not going to be during my week-long thing because I'm not going to do too many rewatches during my week-long thing. My point for doing the week-long thing is to do watch a bunch of movies I have not seen yet. But there are going to be times where you're like, you know what? I don't really feel like watching anything new. I've watched just nothing but new stuff. I kind of want to eat my dinner, or I'm getting tired or whatever. Let me just put on a movie that I've watched before, know how it ends, know what's going on, and just entertain myself. And if I fall asleep, I fall asleep. Or if I'm focused on my food, don't pay much attention to it, blah, blah, blah. So and so forth. But Usual Suspects is one I probably need to look at again because it is such a good film, good thriller. Saw it in the movie theater, so very proud of that. Number 7, a lot of people are going to be like, how can you have this movie high up? I have it this high up because it is a fun movie, much like the Minecraft movie of this year. This movie is a lot of fun, based on a kid's cartoon. It's a live action version of it. Written by one of the writers of Tiny Toon Adventures, which at that time was one of the biggest and best cartoons out there. And great pop culture jokes, fantastic cast, includes Bill Pullman, Christina Ricci, Kathy Moriarty, Eric Idle, and just a phenomenally filmed movie. Great score by James Horner, and one that I religiously watch every Halloween. I talked about during my Halloween 13 Days of Halloween lists. Casper. Casper is number 7, the live action version of it. Bill Pullman plays like a Ghostbuster kind of thing, but he's more of a ghost psychologist who is hired by people to enter houses and to try to make a connection to the ghosts that are haunting the house, and then have psychiatric talks with them to try to help them move on and let them say, why are you, tell me why you're still here, and let me try to help you move on. He's a psychiatrist who helps ghosts. And that's obviously considered a joke thing because ghosts don't really exist. And her daughter, teenager Christina Ricci, is embarrassed by that. We find out that he's doing it not just to help people, but he's also trying to find his dead wife, played by Amy Brenneman, who died by cancer or something before her time. And Bill Pullman misses his wife and is having trouble raising his teenage daughter, who is rebelling against him. And he's doing his best, but no, he just would just love to have his wife back, because not only does he love her incredibly, but it could be, he knows his daughter misses her also. So he's also trying to find her also. And Christina Ricci knows that she's well advanced for her age. So they move to this new town in Maine where Kathy Moriarty's character, who was the daughter of a rich man who didn't get any money and only got this house, discovers the house is haunted by 3 ghosts, and 4 ghosts, actually, technically. and she is convinced to get Bill Pullman's character there to get the ghost out of the house so she can look for apparently a treasure that's in the house, that she believes that there's a treasure in that house and she can't look at it when there's ghosts in there. So she wants him to get the ghosts out. Casper, meanwhile, who is Casper the Friendly Ghost, is the nicest of the four ghosts there. The three ghosts are his cousins or his brothers or whatever, who are all obnoxious ghosts, and they do exist. They make themselves known to Kathy Moriarty and Eric Idle and Bill Pullman and Christina Ricci, particularly Casper, who befriends Christina Ricci and Bill Pullman. And then the trio of brothers kind of become enamored of Bill Pullman because they think he is very entertaining for a human, and they take advantage of him. But Bill Pullman's one step ahead of them. That's what he wants them to do, so he can correctly psychologically analyze them. It's outstanding performance by Bill Pullman, and has one of my favorite directed scenes of all time, where it's near the end, and this is kind of a spoiler alert. After this, all the storyline happens at the very end. There's a Halloween party going on at their house, and Christina Ricci has no one to dance with because the person who was supposed to be her date was actually just using her to disrupt the party, but they get disrupted by the ghosts. And Casper, who's fallen in love with her, makes a wish with an angel who happens to be Kat's mom. And she offers him, grant him his wish to be human for about 10 minutes. So she turns him human, and he goes downstairs and he dances with Christina Ricci. And she never saw this guy before, but she kind of knows, but she doesn't know what's going on. And there's a sequence where that's happening, and Bill Pullman's watching from upstairs, watching the dance, like that, watching his daughter dance. And he feels a breath of air brush his hair, and he knows immediately that his wife used to do that to him. And he spins around, and he's face to face with his dead wife, who's now an angel. And they have a conversation, which is absolutely a heartbreaking conversation, but lovely, beautiful, sweet, that shows the love between these two and the love that they have, not only for themselves, but also for their daughter. And so James Horner's music is building and building and building to the sequence. And then all of a sudden, the clock starts chiming 10. That's when Casper's turns back to a ghost. So you have the chime going dong, dong. And then Amy Brenneman's like, I have to leave you now because you guys love me so well. I have no unfinished business. That's why I'm not a ghost. That's why I'm an angel. And so you're never going to find me. And you need to start living your life, and don't worry about me because I can watch over you guys and we'll be together, eventually. And she starts disappearing, and Casper starts changing. It's just a combination of the dongs, the raising Horner music, Amy Brenneman leaving Bill Pullman with a beautiful dolly shot pulling away from him with flashing lights around him, and then Casper turning into Casper while he's kissing Chris. It is an absolutely stunningly gorgeous sequence of film that every time I watch that movie, I replay it over and over and over and over again. I think I found the copy of it on YouTube of just that scene, and it's a stunning sequence. It's such a fun film, much like how Minecraft movie was. It's brainless, it's fun, it's sweet. It takes place in fall around Halloween, so you've got gorgeous scenery up in Maine, and you just got, there's another beautiful sequence where they're on top of a lighthouse at night, and the moon is up in the sky reflecting in the water. The water is currenting and doing waves and stuff like that. And they're, oh my God. And James Horner's score is so phenomenal in that one. Casper, to me, yes, there are 6 other movies that are better than Casper, but it's real tough. I got down to like my top 10 was really, really hard to try to figure out because there's so many good movies in 95. And this is the best. And this is kind of the order that can switch it out. But I think Casper probably should have been higher up, but I just, with the other movies in front of it, I just can't. Because number 6 is The American President, which is an amazing romantic comedy that I could also watch during 4th of July. Michael Douglas as President of the United States, who's a widowed President of the United States, who decides it's time for him to start dating again. So he starts dating Annette Benning's woman who is someone who's trying to raise money for something. So that's sort of a problem because she can exert influence on him to focus more on her issues than his own. But he plays it off, knows that's what people are thinking about. And she is, that's not the reason why I'm doing this. I actually like this guy for being a guy, not just because he's president. And because it's something that's never happened before, the Republicans, of course, see this as, oh my God, family values. He's having sex with this woman. It's not his wife, just a hallway down from his daughter. The whole United States is in a shit show because the president is dating somebody. And that's exactly what it is. Richard Dreyfuss, again, from Mr. Holland's Opus, pops up as the bad Republican guy running against Michael Douglas as president. This film was directed by Rob Reiner and was written by Aaron Sorkin, which basically was the creation of The West Wing. Martin Sheen plays Michael Douglas's chief of staff. And basically, after Aaron Sorkin did this, he's like, we should do a TV show set in the White House. And that's why he cast Martin Sheen as the president and created The West Wing, because he made this movie. Michael J. Fox is phenomenal in it. David Paymer is great in it. Who else is in it? Annette Bening, Michael Douglas, John Mahoney, fellow June 20th birthday boy. He's in this as well. Richard Dreyfuss plays the bad guy. I feel like I'm missing somebody. But it is a great look at what it's like in the White House from a perspective of what the president is going through, and a situation where what if a president was a widow? Could he start dating, and how would the country react to it? And particularly who he ends up dating, that type of thing. And it's a romantic comedy, but it also has some solid drama in it. It's got some good political stuff in it as well. A great supporting performance from Michael J. Fox, and Martin Sheen for that matter also. And just an amazing film. And that's why it's number 6. Again, after this, Aaron Sorkin's like, let's do The West Wing. And that's what they created that. Number 5 is Toy Story. It's hard to believe that until 1995 and until Toy Story came out, that computer animated cartoon movies were not a big thing. I don't think anyone did them. There might have been 1 or 2 in there, but no one did it. Toy Story was a groundbreaking, iconic introduction to what computer-generated animation could do for movies. And because it was done so well and it was so successful, being the first major release from Pixar, this is Pixar's first full-length film, and the first time that they did some shorts, and it's like they're saying, look, we can do it with shorts. Let's try it with a full-length movie now. And the best way to do it was, why not cast 2 of the hottest actors in the world in 1995 as your leads? You have Tom Hanks and you have Tim Allen. No matter what you may believe about Tim Allen, in 1995, Tim Allen had the Santa Claus. He had Home Improvement. His book was number 1. At one time, he was number 1 on the the top 10 books, top 10 movies, top 10 TV shows. He was number 1 on all those. So he was fairly well known. And Tom Hanks was having his renaissance during this time. Just won an Oscar. Just won back-to-back Oscars for Philadelphia, and Forrest Gump. Was getting ready to star in a movie that this movie came out in November. A movie that came out in the summer also cemented him being a huge draw also. So Tom Hanks and Tim Allen as your main voices helped more people show up to an computer animated film that they might not have been so sure about. The premise is also fantastic. Also, all the toys that you had when you were growing up, they're just sitting around doing nothing. They're inanimate objects. But what if after you leave, they actually are animated? What if they come to life and they have hierarchies and they have rules and they do things and they stuff like that? That's what Toy Story is. You follow the life of toys in this one boy's room as a new toy is introduced to their family, and they have to adjust to the situation. The cast, the rest of the voice cast is phenomenal. Just too many people to introduce. Toy Story 2 is still better than Toy Story 1. Toy Story 3 is better than Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 1. But this was the film that started Pixar, that started everything, that started now. Here we are 30 years later. Pixar is one of the biggest, most awarded, and most technologically advanced movie studios out there. Most of their movies are star caliber. They are taking a different look at Disney instead of just being a typical sort of thing. They delve into more hardcore stuff like parental relationships, racism, end of the world dystopian sort of stuff in their movies, and they are. Pixar was sort of like what Little Mermaid was when Disney had their renaissance. Disney was shitty till Little Mermaid came in '89, and then all of a sudden you get, Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Pocahontas and Hunchback of Notre Dame and Princess and the Pea, and then all these Emperor's New Groove, all these movies that sort of just came out and brought Disney back to life. After Toy Story, you got Toy Story 2, you got Bugs Life, you've got Monsters Inc., you've got Finding Nemo, you've got WALL-E, you've got Us, you've got just all these Brave, you've got all these films, just phenomenal Cars, just phenomenal films, one after another, and Toy Story is the first one that introduced it. Typical cliched story, but the animation style was something unique and unusual nobody had ever seen before, and people loved it. And it came out right around Thanksgiving, so it was great. Number 4 is whenever you talk about underrated movies, this is always on the list. It has a phenomenal cast, directed by Sam Raimi, and it's a genre that hadn't been really touched on for a while, and you needed Sam Raimi to sort of inject it with his own sort of style. It's The Quick and the Dead. I've talked about this movie before. It's your typical sort of Clint Eastwood spaghetti western, but instead of a man with no name, you have a woman with no name played by Sharon Stone, who I still believe this is one of her best performances, up there with Casino, where she plays a gunslinger coming into town for a duel contest. It's a contest where the best shooters in the country are coming to duel for a grand prize. And yes, you could die because it's actual real bullets and stuff like that. But they're hoping that in the end, you're just going to get injured and not killed. But it's a duel competition with some of the worst gunslingers out there, and she comes in, pays her dues to be involved in it, and gets seeded into the competition. The town is run by the corrupt Gene Hackman, who has been all over this list this week. So he's plays one of the worst bad guys he's ever played in this movie. His son is played by a young unknown actor at the time. You might have known him from a few little things, but he was not a very big actor, was kind of an up-and-coming actor by the name of Leonardo DiCaprio. So it's one of his first kind of appearances that he's done. And he's great in this also, showing signs of what he was about to become in 96 with Romeo and Juliet, 97 with Titanic, and how he sort of took off from there. Quick and the Dead was one of the ones that sort of set that all up for him. Another actor who was just starting out and was not very well known in the United States at the time, who went on to become a huge career, Russell Crowe, is in this as well, as a former pastor, or a pastor now, who was a former associate of Gene Hackman's character till he found God, decided he didn't want to kill anybody, but he sort of has been tortured and beaten by Gene Hackman to get him to be in this competition. And then you have just appearances by other actors. You got Pat Hingle pops up. You've got Lance Henriksen pops up in it as well. Gary Sinise has a cameo role as Sharon Stone's father, which led to why she's doing this competition. And it's a Western. Robert's Blossom is in it also. It's a Western that feels like a Western. It has a little bit of a darker edge to it, but it feels like a 1990s style Western, which is a good thing because Westerns really hadn't been that much. The Young Guns movies did pretty good with that to sort of bring that to a head, and then this one just sort of added to it. And then you get Sam Raimi's just his totally chaotic way of directing films. The one best shot that he does is he does a shot through after a guy got shot in the head. The shot is through the hole in the guy's head, looking at the person that shot him. It's a great shot, and it's a totally underrated, undervalued movie that needs to be viewed more by more people because the cast is so good and because the director is so good, and it is one of the best Westerns out there and a good approximation of a modern day spaghetti Western. Number 3, I hinted at this way back when I was talking about The Net, number 28, Sandra Bullock, 1995 was Sandra Bullock's year after her Demolition Man, after her appearance as Demolition Man and Speed. She was starting to become a hot commodity, and then she made this movie, number 3, While You Were Sleeping, which made her America's Sweetheart, a amazing, fun, sweet romantic comedy with Mr. Bill Pullman again, who's also all over this list too, as the role. And Sandra Bullock plays a woman who works in the subway in Chicago, and she has no family. Her parents are dead. She has no siblings. She has no other family. So she's kind of alone, and she works the subway and she covers for people who have family stuff. So she works on Christmas and she works on holidays and stuff like that. She's no one to go to. She's lonely. She has a cat. She's being stalked by her landlord's son, who's a asshole shitbag, who has a couple of good scenes, shows that he's not entirely an asshole shitbag, but still he is. But he does have some moments where he actually plays a pretty decent character. And Sandra Bullock becomes enamored of this guy that she sees every day at the subway. They've never spoken, but it's just sort of a love at first sight for her perspective, played by Peter Gallagher. And it's like she just envisions, relationship with him, marriage with him, and all this stuff, but she never talks to him, doesn't know his situation, doesn't even know who he is. So she just lives her life, and then eventually she is kind of forced into working on Christmas Day. And it is a Christmas movie. And so she's working Christmas Day, not a lot of people are coming, and then it just so happens that the guy that she's crushing on pops up and actually says Merry Christmas to her, and actually says something to her. And she's solely blindsided by that. All she goes is, and then he walks away. It's fantastic. It's like, and then she's like, how are you? You look nice. Merry Christmas to you too. I love you. Marry me. And it's just the way that Sandra Bullock does it is so perfect. And then when she's just like beating herself up about not talking to him, she notices that 2 thugs start bugging him because he's the only one on the platform right now waiting for the subway. And these 2 thugs are trying to steal his wallet or whatever, and they push him into the train tracks, and then they run off, and Sandra Bullock's job is to help get him off because train's coming. So she's not going to stop the thugs because they're already way gone, and they're afraid that they might have just killed some dude, but they just for their wallet, but they need to get the hell out of there for the police show up. So they run off, and she's not going to try to stop them. She's going to try to save this guy, not because she doesn't want to stop them, but this guy is in danger. So fuck those guys. I know you're criminals, and hopefully you'll get busted, but this guy's getting ready to die if I don't do anything. So it's not just because she's enamored with him, it's because she's going to fucking die. So she gets him off of the tracks before the train comes, and then he sees her briefly, and she says hi to him, and then he collapses. He's in a coma. So she calls the police. The police come, and she goes to hospital with him because she knows what's going on. And due to some confusion, a nurse believes that Sandra Bullock is Peter Gallagher's fiance. So she allows him to go in and talk to him and stuff like that. And then the nurse calls the actual family to come in. And you've got, oh my God, Peter. Just a great group of character actors play his family. Glynis Johns is one of them. The guy who played Peter Boyle, who played the Frankenstein and Young Frankenstein, he's in that as well. Or Frankenstein's monster, I should say, is in it as well. And then I forget who the other old guy is, but he's the guy that's pretty famous also. And they go in to see their son, and there's all kinds of confusion. Sandra Bullock tries to sneak out, but they're like saying, what happened, who said whatever. And the nurse is like, yeah, it's his fiance. And they're like, what? And they hadn't seen their son in a while. They didn't know he was engaged. And so they're happy to see her. And so they believe that she is the fiance. So they treat her like one. So they get her involved in the family, and it's telling this lie is giving her family, and she doesn't want to hurt anybody, but she also doesn't want to tell them that she's not family because doesn't know if their son is going to live, and she's the only connection to them. So she just sort of has to, in this area where she's got to play this role while at the same time enjoying it because she has her first family. Then she meets Peter Gallagher's brother, played by Bill Pullman, who is more along the lines of the guy that she finds herself attracted to. And they start having interaction. He's attracted to her as well. And so you have this romantic comedy where the brother is attracted to who he believes is his brother's fiance. She's attracted to him, but she also has to pretend to be the fiance for this guy. So it just plays into this whole wild romantic comedy that could probably never really happen, but it's still a fun, entertaining Christmas romantic comedy. I watch this around Christmas time all the time, and I think I put it on my Christmas list when I did my list shows at Christmas time because it is a Christmas movie. Even though it only has a few sequences at Christmas, it takes place in that week between Christmas and New Year's. So but it's a wonderful film. It was a beautiful romantic comedy, a lot of fun. Sandra Bullock was absolutely cute, funny. Her and Bill Pullman have insane chemistry with each other, and he's always been a good actor also. And it's finally good to see him, spoiler alert, end up with the girl, despite never really ending up with the girl, really, and ever any of his movies that he's in, really. To see him do that here is great. It's a fantastic movie. Romantic comedy is probably one of Sandra Bullock's probably one of her best films. And got her to become America's sweetheart. Number two is I've talked about this movie forever. I talk about it all the time. It's one of my first favorite movies, one of beginning of a trilogy. But the reason why it's number two and not number one is because I like the sequel a lot more. And I have a couple issues with this movie, but not many. It's Before Sunrise. Richard Linklater, Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy. Premise is American who came to Europe to visit his girlfriend, discovers that his girlfriend doesn't want to be his girlfriend anymore early on in the trip, but he's over there for like 2 weeks and he doesn't want to go back home yet. So he just takes the Euro train and just takes train rides all across all across Europe, stopping at different places because he doesn't want to go back home just yet after a disastrous visit to his girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend. And on his last day, he's riding into Vienna and he's going to take off Vienna the next morning to go back to America. He meets Julie Delpy's character, a French woman who had been visiting her grandmother and was taking the Eurail back to Paris. The two of them strike up a conversation and they just start talking about anything under the sun. Philosophy, dreams, memories, sex, their lives together. And they realize that they're having a good time talking with each other. So they get to Vienna, and she still has ways to go to get to France, but he has to get off of Vienna. And he's like, look, I'm going to offer you a deal here. Look, I have a great time talking with you, and I think you had a great time with me, and I want to keep talking with you. I'm in Vienna only overnight. I don't have enough money for a hotel or anything like that, so I'm just going to wander around Vienna before I take off at like 8 a.m. in the morning. It would be a lot more fun if you came with me because we were having a good time. And so and he's like, also, it's like, if I turn out to be some sort of psychopath, you jump on the next train and you're back home before it's too late. So she agrees, and the two of them start a relationship by walking around Vienna on a gorgeous June night. And they starts off awkward because this is a weird sort of thing, and then it gradually eases into that sort of easy one-off where they're really comfortable with each other, and they start falling in love with each other, and it just spans their whole night and just covers all their conversations that they have. They have their first fight. They have discussions, beliefs. They learn about each other, what's going on. You learn about their histories, who they are, stuff like that, and it just builds and builds and builds to the climax where they have just utterly fallen in love with each other, but they don't know what to do about it. So they decide that they'll meet back in 6 months, and then they'll see where it's going. They won't call, they won't text, they won't mail each other. They'll just, let's just remember this night as being a fantastic night. And then we'll see where we are 6 months later, and then it ends. And then we get the sequel where we find out that 9 years have passed and one of them didn't show up. And the two of them meet up again 9 years later in France, and they spend another day walking. That's Before Sunset, and that's my favorite of the trilogy. But Before Sunrise is a perfect setup for that. If it was just that movie and they didn't do the rest of it, it would probably be number one. But because they did make Before Sunset, I like it a lot better than Before Sunrise. There's one or two sequences in Before Sunrise I'm not the biggest fan of. I always sort of ignore, close my eyes, or just maybe even fast forward through them sometimes. But in general, Before Sunrise is a phenomenal movie. Its 30th anniversary was back in January, and I actually watched it on its 30th anniversary that night. So that was good. So I actually did watch it earlier this year. And it still holds up. I still don't like those sequences that I saw, but still a great movie. And that's why it's number two. Number one is Apollo 13, Ron Howard's gem with Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, and Kevin Bacon. Gary Sinise is in there as well, as is Ed Harris. And based on a true story. Ron Howard directs with a deft hand. Tom Hanks coming off his double Oscar wins for Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, and is now one of the most bankable actors in Hollywood history at this moment. Headlines this cast based on a true story about the Apollo 13 mission, where he plays Jim Lovell, who it's his turn to walk on the moon. And they fly out to the moon, but a explosion occurs and they can't go to the moon. They have to find a way to survive long enough to get back to Earth so they can live and not die in space. Meanwhile, people at Mission Control have to figure out a way to help save their astronauts so they don't die while being on Earth and not being able to be hands-on in helping them. Even though you know how it ends, the drama just builds and builds. The tension builds and builds. And the main characters get a little tiffy with each other, being confined and under a lot of stress in the situation. And then the people in Mission Control, they get a little tiffy with each other because they're all trying to figure out ways to save them, but things just keep happening, which just makes things even worse and worse. It is just as I said, for being a film that we know what happens, we know they survive. Spoiler alert, but come on, if you know your history, you know they survive. But how they get to the point that they survive is what makes this film so good, showing the viewpoint of the astronauts as they try to stay calm and try to do what NASA tells them to do to reorient themselves to get back to Earth. Then you cut down to Mission Control as they're trying to figure out the problems using science to issue. One of my favorite scenes is they are discovering that the CO level is getting real heavy in their confined area.
because they're breathing out more CO than there is oxygen. So eventually they're going to suffocate themselves. So they got to figure out a way to filter out that extra CO2, but they don't have a filtration system that's going to fit in this cockpit thing. So the NASA, and this is the best scene, one of the best scenes in the film, is there's a group of scientists that say we have to have this plug into this using only these, and it's stuff that is not even related to each other, because it's all stuff that's on the ship with them that they can try to turn this into a filter. So they have to use science to try to figure out, okay, how are we going to use this shit that they have on their ship to filtrate the extra CO2 out of there. It's an amazing look at how scientists and science works, and how scientists work their asses off to try to save the day. And then on top of that, Gary Sinise, who was supposed to be on the ship but got thrown off when he supposedly could have been exposed to measles or mumps or something like that, and they're afraid that would get sick. They didn't know if he had it or not, but it's possible he could have. And then while they're up in space, if he gets a case of the measles or whatever, it's going to be very, very bad. So they ground him and they put his backup up there, played by Kevin Bacon. So that sort of had to happen, because when the shit hits the fan, Gary is the one that knows the most about that ship, and he's on Earth. So he can sit down and he can go into the simulator and figure out a way to help them come back also. And he has a great sequences where he's trying to solve a problem, but he's telling them, you got to make it the same atmosphere that they are under, so that, it'll help me focus more, stuff like that. I can't just let it be. I can't rest. I can't do that because they can't rest. And it is just a great shot that even though he's no longer part of the crew, he still is by helping them out. Amazing film, great. Supposedly they went to the Vomit Comet and filmed a lot of the zero-G stuff without special effects. So a lot of the zero-G stuff you see in the movie is stuff that was filmed on the Vomit Comet. They did a mock-up of the set and had the actors up there and do all that stuff. It's just a great movie, and if you haven't seen it already, I highly recommend you do. All right, I've talked enough now, over 2 hours. Wasn't quite planning on being that long, but here we are. So thanks for listening, hanging out with me on my top 30 films in 1995. Stay tuned. In about 8 hours, I will be back with my regular show. I got to do my research in a few hours anyway. So see you guys then. Thanks for watching.